So, my name, I go with a lot of names, but my official name is John Tsegay. But all of my family and friends, they know me by Meron. So, Meron is like my childhood, my family name. But John is like the office name, and my passport name is John. I actually changed my name John when I came in Canada, just for some reasons. But my family and friends all know me by John. I came to Canada 11 years ago now. 11 years in Canada, and a lot of things has happened. From the first time I came to Winnipeg airport and the way I walked in, it was cold, to today, so much happened. And so I'll go way back before I came to Winnipeg. And that all starts at my home in Eritrea, East Africa, where I was born into a Coptic family. Um, I never met my dad, but I grew up with my mother. My father was a soldier, and my mother was an undercover police. But she had to leave that job so that she could take care of me. And as she did that, in 1997, the last war that happened in my country, had to ask my mom to go back to military, and so my father was. That's where my mom and dad met, serving the country. But I never got to meet him because he died at the war, and my mom made it back. But just before she had to go to the final service, she had to send me away with my uncles, and my uncles took me out of the country, and I went out of the country in a way that was not legal, because the age I was at, I was 4 years old. At that age, you're not allowed to leave the country. If you could leave the country, you have to leave like when you're like a couple month old, or if you are 80 plus. But anything above my age, that was 4 or 2, you don't leave the country. So they had to pay people money and hide me overnight and cover me in buses and make sure that I go out, especially for me because my parents were in the military. And that's very important for the government, so they don't want to lose that. But I got out, and I believe God's plan all started at my birth. Even with my family, I can speak more of my mom because I didn't really know much of my dad. But my mom, that she came to know the Lord in a very special way. Like she had a vision of Jesus Christ, and she followed Christ because of that reason. A lot of people tried to witness to her and tell her about Jesus, but she never really listened to them. So for the first time when she showed up at church, everybody started to ask questions like, who evangelized her, who told her about Jesus? And then she told them the testimony, how she got a vision of Jesus, and that's why she decided to come to church, because she's seen him and she believes in him. But I never got to know that. Like I wasn't living with her at that time. I came to Sudan. I lived in a small town called Kassala. I lived there for about 7 years. My mom and I really never saw each other for that time until I was about 13 years old. My mom lived in a different part of the country. She left the country also the same way I did, but she had to walk from Eritrea to Sudan. She had to literally walk, and they had lost a lot of people on the way. They had to bury a lot of people on the way. And my mom had so many pictures of me, and she lost it all on the way because they had to drop everything as they walked because the journey was getting so hard. But she made it to a safe place, and I was living with my grandmother, who have 11 children, 12 children actually. So I have 11 uncles and 1 aunt, and I lived with them, and they were really tough guys. They brought me up in a tough way. But when it comes to me, that's when I really loved church when I was a kid. So I would go to school. I didn't pay attention so much. But when I went home, I would just throw my backpack and run to church. And church was like running as a kid. It was about maybe 30 minutes away. So I would just run to church and be there all night, come late. And I just loved being around it. It was just, I had some love for church as a kid. I was so comfortable being there. Two of my uncles were serving there. They worked beside the priest, and the priest that was at that church was an Egyptian priest. So I really liked hearing him and stuff. So he also liked me. So he's like, okay, come help in this way. Then soon I started to work and I became a deacon, and there's like levels that you work at. You graduate each level, and I went all the way to almost becoming his assistant, because I was just super active. Always early there. I loved it. I now when I look back, I used to stand there in front of the church and I would open the book to a certain place and I would read to the people. And I never took that into consideration back then, that God was doing something. God was preparing something of my life. But anyhow, I was living there as a Coptic, just moving. But if you ask me, did I know Jesus at that time? I really didn't know Jesus. I was doing what I was born into. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just liked it. It felt good. I did it. But I was never conscious about it. But then all of a sudden, one day my grandmother tells me, tomorrow you're going to have to go see your mother. And I just said, okay. I was about 13 years old. And I said, okay, sure. So early, about 6 o'clock in the morning, some man came with a truck and put me in the truck with other people who were traveling. And we went to a different city, the capital city of Sudan, Khartoum. And that's where I met my mom. And I remember we started to live together. And my mom was a believer. She was born again. And she took me to church. And the moment I got into church, it just felt so awkward for me, because growing up in a Coptic church, it's so different than going to any other kind of a church. So I'm like, I noticed so many different things. I started to ask, why is this not here? Why is this not here? What are people doing on the stage? But then that love I had for church started to die away, because I was having a lot of challenges, and meeting my mom as a teenager, I already had some sort of personality in me that I took from my uncles. So we used to get into a lot of conflicts and a lot of fights, a lot of disagreements. So that I started to not really care about church. My mother would ask me to sit at the very front, I would sit in the third row in the church, and people thought I was the pastor's kid. But it's just my mom would tell me to sit there, and she would tell me to raise your hand when you worship and listen to the preacher. And at home, my mom would ask me, what did the preacher preach about? I didn't really remember. I used to just sit there, but my mind was somewhere else. Now, all of this was back in Sudan. I used to love going to church, but then I don't like going to church no more. And I did it because my mother went to church. So we came to Canada. We come to Winnipeg. We landed as landed immigrants, and my mom took me to church with her still. And at that time, though, this was another level where I really didn't like to go to church. I thought I could do something else with my time instead of going to church. My mom would still make me sit in front, and I did it because of my mom. When I went to church because my mother went to church, I had no love for nothing that has to do with church. And it actually got worse, where I thought there was really no God. And especially because the relationship that I was having with my mom was getting worse. And I remember having days where I used to think, God, if you were real, you could have helped me to have a better relationship with my mother. But I felt like I was not getting any response, and the relationship was getting worse. And I'm like, of course, there's no God. If there is a God, he would have helped my mom to understand what I'm trying to say. But I started to get even more quieter and more shut. And I started to get different kind of personalities. I would be different in this place. I would be different in that kind of place. So I would change my personality everywhere I went. I tried to look different everywhere, to the point that my friends would know that there's something wrong with me. It got so bad to a point where one day I just sat at the kitchen. My mom went to work, and I just sat there at the floor and I started to cry. And I said, God, I asked you to help me, but you're not listening. I thought you were real. So I cried for maybe a couple hours. And then I got up, I went to the bathroom, and what is this? There's some sort of soap that was at the drawer. I opened it and I started to drink it because I had the intention to kill myself. I just didn't think through it. I didn't think what that was that gonna do the job. Like I contemplated a couple days what I should do, and if what will I be successful to make sure that I would die. But at that moment, I just got so mad at myself where I just took whatever that was in front of me. I drank it. I thought it would kill me. Instead, it gave me stomach pain for a month and a half. I was in so much pain. I would go to the hospital all the time. I hated medications, and I didn't want to take them. So I was in pain a lot. So then, but my mom at that time didn't know that I was up to those kind of things, that I was trying to kill myself and that I hated everything around me. Now, there I started to hear people coming to speak to me about God and stuff. But then all of a sudden, I started to have visions, dreams. And I had like about 3 visions about God trying to ask me to come to Him, to pray to Him. But every time I wake up in the morning, I forget about it. I wasn't interested. I didn't want it to. Until God stopped talking to me, He started to talk to other people about me. And they would come to my mom and they would tell her, I saw your son in this kind of vision. I dreamt about him in this thing. And I'd just hear them across the room talking about it. And I just didn't pay attention to it. My mom always wanted me to learn Psalm 23. She wanted me to memorize it. And I would try to memorize the first verse, and my mom would ask me what it is. I always forget it. So, because I had no interest really, I just thought it was nothing. But God really was trying to talk to me. And finally, God got my attention in a very interesting way. Where I was playing volleyball at high school, at grade 9. I was playing volleyball. All of a sudden, I have sharp pains in my lungs. This is about 6 years ago now. Sharp pain on the right side, and it really hurts. And I sat down. I told the gym teacher, this is happening to me. They called my family. They came and picked me, and they took me to Health Science Children's Hospital. And they took an x-ray, and they said, I cannot explain it in the doctor's terms, but to put it in a simple way, things that look like small balloons started to grow in my lungs. And the doctor said, we need to cut the bigger parts away, like cut them before they infect even worse, and it may result to death. And we did it because it was simple. I was awake. They just numb one side of my body. I could see what the doctor was doing. And they would put a small tube, just like maybe this big. It would go in. And I was sent home, and I was told to come back. But as I was sleeping at night, I pulled it out. And it was painful. And I had to go to the hospital quickly. They put it back, and it was really painful. But they took another x-ray to see how things are going. They found that my right lung infected my left lung. Overnight, they found the same thing on the other lung, and that the same thing grew. They said, let's do the same thing to the other lung. But this time they kept me in the hospital. They didn't send me home. They opened it, they cut it, the bigger parts, they would say. And this time my mom asked them, why is this happening? Like, what's the real problem? I overheard the doctor saying, I grew too fast, or something like that, or I stretched my lungs. But at the back of my head, I also remembered what I drank, and I said, maybe I did something to my lungs too with that. But I was also a very sporty guy. I loved sport, So I joined University of Manitoba track and field. I ran for Bisons and for athletics. And I went all the way to nationals and got third place running for University of Manitoba, 1500 meters. And I did the 5K. So I really loved sport to a point where we would run and we would faint and fall on the ground, and our coach would give us like an orange juice, drink this and redo it again. I thought, I'm like, maybe I really pushed my body. But to a point where I actually got sick. I'm like, but God had something else going on in the background. So we thought I'm going to get better. But when they took another x-ray, they found that now the back of my lungs, both of them, got the same thing. And then the doctor said, you know what, this is a serious case. I didn't think it was going to get there. So he would call my pastor and my mom, and he would sit them down and he would explain something to them. And he tells them, now you're at a stage where I have to tell you this. Just before, speaking to my mom, just before your son, two youth, just the same age as him, I was about 17 turning 18, had the same surgery. In all over Manitoba, only 2 had this kind of condition at that time. And 2 of them had this surgery, but after 1 week, they both passed away. Because the lungs were, they had so much, their surgery effect on them got them so weak that their body just gave up and they died. When my mom heard that, as her only son, which I am her only son, she couldn't make her mind up to think, what if she loses her only son? And through everything she've gone through, from my childhood to the price she had to pay, the separation we had, and just, as any parent would understand this. So my mom would ask him, what if my son wouldn't do the surgery? The answer was, I would die with severe pain. And what if I do the surgery? He may live, he may not live. So the only way they were going to do the surgery is they asked my mom and my pastor to sign some papers that if I do die, the doctors did everything they can, and if I don't do the surgery, they have warned us. So like this hospital won't be sued. So my mom prays and everything, and finally she walks into my room, and I'm in pain. I'm 17 years old and half or so. I'm in pain, and God is not anywhere in my atmosphere. I'm not thinking about him. She comes and she tells me, Meron, you believe in Jesus, right? And because I wanted to be respectful to my mom, I told her, yeah, I believe in Jesus. And then she walks out. But I didn't even think twice about it. Like, who's Jesus at that moment? Because the one thing I skipped quickly here, because I thought this is the perfect place to tell it, is that I tried to be a Muslim for 1 year. And I agreed with my friend, and he taught me things. And I started to worship Allah, and I prayed to Mecca, and I would go to a different place where nobody would see me, and I would do the exercises, I would read. At that time, I was fluent in Arabic. That's it. I was heading there. And now I'm here laying on the bed. I may survive or not. They go into the surgery. My mom signs the paper after all. The doctor tells her it would take 3 hours and a half to come out of the surgery. So the surgery starts, and instead it takes 6 hours and a half. After 3 hours and a half, I was told that my mom, after 3 hours and a half, wanted to turn Health Science Center upside down because she believed her son is dead. Because why is he not out after 4 hours? What's going on? Something wrong happened. But the doctor was so kind that he told my mom, I could lose my license for doing this, but I'm going to let you come in and see him. So they would take her to a special room and, sanitize her in some way so that the room, anyhow, doctor stuff. And they bring her in, and she would see the machine is working, I'm alive. So what happened, she said. So when they opened my lungs, they would find like darker spots in my lung and they said it just took us long. It's so severe that we need to clean it. So he's alive. Yes, he's alive. Okay. My mom goes out. The surgery is happening. Now, here is the turning point that happened in my life. This is the reason why I'm sitting here right now. That during the surgery, I go into a vision where I appear in this very narrow path, very, very long, but very narrow, and high walls made out of red bricks. And I looked far, and I saw like a man sitting on a stone holding a stick in his hand. And I'm wondering, who is this man? And just like that, in a split of a second, he just appears right in front of me. He was far away. He's here now. So I stare at his feet, and I come up, working my way up at his, like he was wearing a long rope. And the rope had 3 colors: purple, red, and gold. And I look at it, and this is new to me. He's holding a stick. By the time I get to his face, it's so bright, like a sun. You couldn't make a shape out of it, but it's just too bright. And all of a sudden, in my heart, I don't say it out loud. I say, "Who's this?" And he says, "I'm Jesus." And at that moment, I was shocked. Right away in my head, I'm thinking there. I could remember what I was thinking. I said, why? Why Jesus? And he tells me right away, he calls me by my childhood name. He says, "Meron, the doctor is going to tell you you're going to live for 7 days. And you will die after that. But if you believe in me, I will give you life, and I will send you around the world, and you will tell people about my name." I'm still just staring at him, and what's going on? He comes close and he puts his arms around my shoulder, and I start to walk with him. And that narrow path all of a sudden just opens up to Winnipeg. And he says, "Walk, I'll be with you." I take like 2-3 steps. I look back, he's not there. And the vision is gone. I wake up, and that's the first thing I thought about. I could hear the nurse saying, "If you can hear me, just press my fingers," because I was so weak. And I could, but I remember just after the nurse stopped talking, that's the first thing I thought about. I mean that's kind of state, but that's the first thing that occupied my mind. And I'm thinking, was that? Did I just see something? I never really read the Bible, but one day when I started to, I was just I didn't think it was there. But as I read through Matthew chapter 17, where it tells the story where Jesus goes to a mountain, and he starts to pray, and it's a mountain of transfiguration, and his face transforms like the sun. I'm like, that's him. That's the man that came. And then I was in grade 12 at that period of time, and I said, it occupied every part of me. I just got busy thinking about it. So I shared it with my friend. And my friend asks me, "Did you say the man had a stick on him? He was holding a stick?" And I said, "Yes." And he knows the story about Psalm 23, how my mom was trying to teach me that chapter. And he says to me, "Meron, maybe that was your shepherd." And I go and I start to read it, and my eyes were totally open to that. I could see it now. And I'm thinking, like, I was speechless. I was just like, God was up to this the whole time. The whole time I was thinking he's not around. So a couple days later, I wake up, and this might sound very funny, but I wake up, and for the first time in my head, I'm thinking Bible college. And I actually didn't know what Bible college was. So I went to Google and I searched, what is Bible college? And I figure out, okay, that's where people go to learn about the Bible. So I'm like, is that where God want me to go? And I just graduated grade 12. And I started to look for Bible colleges. I applied to 3 of them. Finally, one gets back to me from Toronto, World Impact Bible Institute with Dr. Peter Youngern. And they respond, like, the other Bible colleges took about maybe 8 days to respond. That Bible college, though, took 2 hours to respond. And they just responded to me right away. And they said, they even mailed me the applications for free, and I could send it for free. And they just said, just come. And when I figured that it was Dr. Peter Youngren, who was the president of that Bible college, I'm like, I know that man. I watch him on TV. I know what he was about. So I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm gonna go. And I tell my mom, and my mom doesn't fight me about it, and I go. And this journey begins. I'm 19 years old. I'm at a Bible college in Toronto, and I went for 2 years. I graduated from the Bible college. In the second year, like throughout the Bible college, a lot of things are happening. God is opening my eyes to a lot of things. And I learned so much. And the second year, when I come back to it, when we're about to graduate, we were introduced to missions. And we were taught about missions. And the Bible college has connections to mission fields around the world. And you can sign up and go to a mission field and apply all these things you learned. And every time they talked about missions, just my heart would burn. I felt like there was fire inside. And I'm like, okay, this is something I need to do. And without a second thought about it, I made up my mind, shared it with my mom and my close friends, and I said, I'm going. And it was an 8-month plan, 8-month mission in Tanzania, in Mwanza City, where we would go there and be missionaries, working with churches, holding seminars, preaching in churches, teaching youth and young adults, and mainly holding open-air festivals. They would be called crusades, but our Bible college taught us not to call it crusades, but to call it a festival. And we would do a lot of festivals, door to door, and then open-air festivals where we invite people. So I was so excited. I went with the team, and I knew God was calling me to do that. I left everything that I knew here, and I just went. And as I was in the Bible college, just when I was about to make that decision, the instructor was teaching about the Holy Spirit and missions. But all of a sudden, I just closed my eyes, and I started to see pictures go by my eyes, and I saw myself standing on a stage, and there was someone next to me. I couldn't hear it, but I could tell the action. And there was a lot of people standing in front. And when I got back to my consciousness, I'm like, well, why is there a second person standing on the stage? That person was repeating what I was saying. But then, as I was doing the mission, as I was at the mission, one time we were standing on this stage, and there were multitude of people just packed in the field. And all of a sudden, I just saw that picture again. And I just paused preaching. I just stopped. And the interpreter just looked at me and he just wondered what's going on. And I just walked a little bit back, and I started to just thank God for what I just saw. I'm like, you're up to a lot of things, God. And I just said, thank you. I was just a 19 years old boy sitting in a chair somewhere in Toronto. And he told me I was going to be preaching somewhere. And I saw it happening. And there was so many times that I decided this point helped me never to doubt God again. But that was another reborn of God is doing something. And the 8th month turned into 11-month mission. The 11th month turned into 2 years mission. And I started to work with Bible colleges and teach at Bible colleges. And I ended up working even extra there and overseeing, becoming a dean of students on one Bible college. I went back and got my advanced diploma in the Bible study. I was relaxed in a way that I was not dangerously comfortable. I was just at the right place where I need to be in the mission field. And I just saw myself doing that for years. But then God tells me you need to go back to Winnipeg. And I'm not happy to hear that. I'm like, God, I'm comfortable here. I'm great here. I'm doing things here. This is perfect. This is the mission field. There's many people I can reach here. This is perfect. I'm traveling around East Africa. I'm going to a different country every month. What more do I need from this? But then God puts it like, like I just got like this heavy stone, like somehow like inside my heart, Winnipeg. And I'm like, I'm so uncomfortable about it. I'm like, I really don't want. And then all of a sudden I start to get all kind of phone calls from Winnipeg. People I've never spoke with. Pastors that I did not have connection with. They're just calling me and they're like, hey, we're waiting for you. And I'm like, what? I'm like, God, why? But finally, I spoke with the president of the Bible College and the mission field, and we had so much things to do together, and we had plans, and we wanted to do things together. But then when I shared that with him, it was some sad moments where you had so much planned, and you're like, you're gonna leave, and there were two sides of it. Obviously, you wouldn't be so happy to let go of someone that was working so close with you. And then the second thing, though, he was so glad that I'm trusting God with this. And he prayed for me and he said, go. And I went. I landed in Winnipeg in August, just last year, August. And I'm thinking I made the biggest mistake in my life. I come in Winnipeg for 2 months. I'm so sorrowful. Like I'm bitter. I'm like, what did I do? Like, could I go back? Like I should go back. Like that was a mistake. I just made it up. No, that was just not right. But then, God with his habit puts me right in missions in Winnipeg. And I started to get so caught up with the youth, and my eyes were open to what they were going through. And somehow God gave me a favor in my community that they could trust me and they could work with me and they could call me. And I'm finding myself 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock all over Winnipeg in the morning, 3 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, picking up youth from the corner and picking up from what club, and I'm at what. And sometimes I'm spending the nights at the club with them. And just sitting there, and they're just drinking, and they're just looking at me like, what kind of a weird pastor are you? Why are you sitting here and watching us? I told them Jesus told me to sit here with you, and that's all I have to do. They're like, okay, well, go ahead and preach to us. I'm like, he did tell me to preach. I just need to be your friend. And today, 4 of these youth are ministering with us at our church, and the only thing that actually God used was for me to just sit and be their friend. And I didn't really need to open John 3:16 and go at them. From that, God made me repent and change my mind and realize I'm in Winnipeg for a reason. It doesn't matter if it's not for thousands, if it's not for 100,000, it's for 1, it's for 10, it's for 30 people that need me. Sorry, my phone is ringing. When you ask an African preacher to come and share a story, you have to settle in. Africans, people talk forever.
That's good. I love it.
And now that I'm in Winnipeg, I'm happy. I'm here. I'm part of God's big plan with his large body of Christ that's in Winnipeg. Working with youth and young adults is my passion. And God put it in our heart just last year in October 27. We launched a new ministry, life-giving ministry. It's a multicultural ministry, but it's born out of the home church from our parents, where they only speak Tigrinya, Eritreans services, that they never had a service that could reach other people, older people. Sorry, my phone again. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, so we shared the vision with our church elders, and we told them it's about time that we reach our young generation with the language, with the culture that they understand. And October 27 is when Life-Giving Ministry was first started, with a clear vision, with a mission, and with practical team and ready people to do the work in the ministry. Ready people to do the work in the ministry. And today, it's almost a year now for the ministry to do a year, and it's we are doing what we can with what God has trusted us with. I'm so I know who's calling. And I know I have an up. They're trying to remind me about something. About 3:30, I have somewhere to be. So this is how Jesus reached my life. And there's one thing I say: if He did it for me, He can do it for so many people. And I'm just here to be a hand of Jesus, a voice of Jesus. I'm just here to do what He wants me to do. He never quit on me. I thought He was not there. He was always there. And my job today is that, to tell people He's there. And God basically wants me to be in people's lives to prove to them that He's there. So I'm happy to share my story, and this is who I am right now.